So, I'm working currently on a publication on Tristan Tzara's Romanian Edas, which are rather not known, although they were somehow hinted at in publications by Henri Béard and others. So this part is dedicated to one of the main issues I find in Tristan Tzara, the present and the presence. So, Tristan Tzara's publishing output in Romania seems both scarce and poor. Between 1912 and 1915, he actually produced 7 poems, 8 translations from Walt Whitman, few editorial notes, and 3 pseudonyms. It's one of the meagerest in literary history. The unpublished manuscripts themselves of that period are also meager, but this scanty harvest points to deep unrest and future achievements. Major tracks of the future avant-garde contributions are to be found there, ranging from the enfranchisement from the classical unbroken poetic persona to the foreshadowing of the ready-made. Tzara started his literary career with the Bucharest magazine Symbolul, which he co-founded. Symbolul, which is, the symbol in English, he co-founded in 1912 at the age of 16. He went on by editing Chemara, The Call, in 1915, just 1 month prior to his definitive leaving for Zurich from Bucharest. All his publishing activity in Romania developed under the sign of the war. In October 1912, precisely when he edited the magazine Symbolul, the First Balkan War started. In October 1915, when he edited Chemara, the First World War was already ravaging Europe for 1 year. His Dadaist uproar during the next years was concomitant with the most appalling bloodshed ever. A time of danger was the background of his debut and major achievements. He never published, though, a single word under his real name, Samuel Rosenstock. Between 1912 and 1915, his pseudonyms, which I treat as creations, ranged from S. Samiro to Jacob the Serpent, Tristan Ruia, and finally the consecrated Tristan Tzara, or Tristan Tzara. It depends on the French, or sometimes it's better to say the right, because it was not developed in a French milieu, it was developed in the Romanian milieu, so the accent is Tristan Tzara, not Tristan Tzara. I'm alternating. It's a difference.
Can you pronounce it again?
Tristan Tzara, not Tristan Tzara.
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 Okay.
So that's, if it would be developed in a French milieu, it would be for sure, as sometimes it is spelled, Tristan Tzara. And it is, it was already publishing for 1 year in Romania with this pseudonym.
But that wasn't his real name.
He never published under his real name, but I said that.
Yeah.
Never, not a single word. But I have another chapter dedicated to this, so it's not the matter of... Okay. His earliest literary strategies were past-bound and escapist. As S. Samiro, he professed a far-fetched symbolist poetry, assuming a nocturial stance, severed from the ongoing reality and bound to an instrumentalist use of language and literary tropes. The few symbolist poems were later on severely treated by Tzara himself. In a letter from January 1934 to the poet Sasha Pană, the Romanian poet Sasha Pană, the surrealist Romanian poet Sasha Pană, who prepared the publication of all the poetry written by Tzara in Romania, he pointed out that, I quote, "I don't see the necessity of including in this collection the poems published in Symbol, the symbol, not because they are symbolist, as you believe, but because, as far as I remember, they are indeed worthless." End quote. Influenced by Jules Laforgue and Maurice Matelanque, and by the Romanian epigrams, which were many, the poems published by Tristan Tzara in Symbolul enact a visibly borrowed literary ego, the deity symbolist one, which is pasted onto a strikingly anti-symbolist cultural consciousness, feeding on recent political and cultural developments. The schizoid feature of the past versus present literary options of the young writer is transparent when one compares his 2 different contributions in Symbolul. On the one hand, there are the poems, like kuntik, song, a sentimentalist role-playing which has to be read in an ironic key. I quote, "It's raining. Time is rhythmically raining at my beloved's window. It's raining. And our love passes by, like the time which knocks at my beloved's window. It's raining. And the time covers all with its heavy grey cloak." End quote. The distant sarcastic mood undermines the empathy through an all-pervading cynicism, which is transparent in the profusion of symbolist commonplaces, aptly employed to disclose the cold poetical mechanics, both professed and estranged by the young poet. The word time is repeatedly written with capital letters. Romanian is no German, so you don't need to. Written with capital letters as a philosophical concept. Tzara will in fact enroll in 1914 at the Bucharest University, pursuing mathematics and philosophy courses, like Bergson and Husserl did decades before. Through passing the voluntary infantile stance to philosophical tackling, Tzara marked the lack of identification with the borrowed literary tropes and artistic persona. In the next issue of Symbolu, he published the poem Poveste, that is story, which accentuated the derisive employment of the symbolist resources. Quote, "3 princesses have left to find 3 lovers, 3 princesses having in their soul 3 misfit loves." End quote. Beside the possible autobiographical link to the 3 friends themselves who grounded the magazine Symbol, which were Tzara, Janko, and Vina, the future Dada pillar in Zurich, the poetry is a dull, scholastic exercise that undermines the pretended affiliation to the literary trend that gave even the name of the magazine, Symbol. The split intellectual persona of the future Tristan Tzara is more visible in the micro-essays he published as editorial notes in the same magazine, but with another pseudonym, Jacob the Serpent, Jakob Sharp. If the published poems are a role-playing of data symbolism, the editorial notes show the young writer as a forward-oriented critical consciousness, lucid and well-informed. Thus, in one of his editorial notes, he refers sarcastically to the sentimentalist poet Cincinat Pavelescu, portraying him as a, quote, "futurist à outrance," betting on the obscene sense that the word futurist may receive in Romania, hinting at sexual intercourse. The surprise does not reside in the pejorative employment of futurism, but in its occurrence even. Futurism was still a new and rather unfamiliar trend on the local cultural scene, and its invocation shows not only the familiarity of the young writer with the newest cultural debates, but his concomitant espousing of both retarded symbolism as a poetic stance and a contradictory, progressive non-conformism in critical matters, as he, in another editorial note, praises the recent publication of the seminal book Du Cubisme by Glaise and Mésanger. It is as if his literary ego was disputed between belonging to both a critical and an uncritical attitude, both a retarded and a progressive stance professed simultaneously. The apparently split persona and concomitant professing of competing and contesting standpoints as a literary technique was mirroring the painterly technique of Cubism, which will further develop into his Dada Manifesto. Quote from the Dada Manifesto of 1918. "I write a manifesto and I want nothing, yet I say certain things. And in principle I am against manifestos, as I am against principles. I write this manifesto to show that people can perform contrary actions together." End quote. Early on in his Bucharest publications, he enacted a Cubist-like ideological fluidity and simultaneous espousal of conflicting perspectives, thus displaying the transitory feature of the phenomenal consciousness, as he simultaneously mimicked a dated literary jargon while rallying with the newest avant-garde developments. The processes of the consciousness show their temporality via the exhibitive impermanence of the creative acts, as they flow into a primal, indiscriminate ideological soup. Yet his contradictory intellectual dwelling of past and present cultural matters was deeper, more dramatic, but also more fruitful for his future Dadaist profile. When the publishing adventure of Symbolu ended after the Christmas 1912, the young writer kept silent for more than 2 years. Out of the few poetic, post-symbolist manuscripts of those years, few pages deserve a special attention. It appears, they are here, I think. It appears that he began working on a puzzling, groundbreaking appropriation of Hamlet around 1913, at the time when he coined the intermediate pseudonym Tristan Ruia, a third pseudonym. Tristan Ruia was most probably forged out of the name of a Romanian scientific hero of the time, Traian Vuia. Traian Vuia was the creator and the pilot of the first self-propelled motored aircraft which ever flight in Paris in 1906. His achievement was largely heralded in newspapers around the world, in France, USA, England, but also in Romania. Traian Vuia turned into a brand name for Romanian pioneering in matters of aviation. The resonance of the name Traian Vuia was the sound of the new, of the future, only 3 years prior to the birth of futurism. However, Samuel Rosenstock, the future Tristan Tzara, altered the potent foreign name, evoking the name of the famous Roman emperor Trajan. It implied strength and commitment, while the cheerless Tristan entailed agony. Here, he also heavily distorted the famous name of the inventor. If Vuia is a name coming from the verb avui, that is to make big noise, big fuss, Ruia is instead suggesting the verb aruina, that is to ruin. Thus, the name Traian Vuia, the inventor's original name so appropriate for a futurist big fuss novelty of the present time, was turned by Tristan Vuia into an epitome of decay and disarray, which worked like a self-deprecatory description. Tristan Tzara, as a philosophical, pessimistic and defeatist positioning, which was influenced by his Nietzsche readings, through a slogan-like name, was already inscribed in the pseudonym Tristan Ruia. Even more significant for the young writer's negotiation with both past, present and future is in order to presentify himself through the choice and construction of his own pseudonyms, which were in fact his major instruments in autonomously defining his literary and personal identity, is the text signed with the pseudonym Tristan Ruia in the preserved manuscripts. He used to sign with his previous pseudonyms as Samiro and Jacob the Serpent. The texts published in Simbolo, but a few months later he only used Tristan Ruia to sign no texts by himself, but apparently appropriations of Hamlet. The manuscripts of the years 1913-1915 simply show decorated page titles of a possible book, an echo of the younger writer's early cultivated editorial capabilities, whose author seemed to be himself, the author of the manuscripts, but who was the self there, while the possible content, but which was the content there, appears to be a pattern work of somebody else, of Shakespeare. Tristan Ruia, as the author of Hamlet, was neither an evidence of an attempt in plagiarism, nor a foreshadowing of the literary strategies of Jorge Luis Borges. Tzara introduced his projected literary self, a literary drone, so to speak, as the author of the famous play, not to absurdly replace Shakespeare as an author, but most probably as a self-reflective and self-constructing commentary. He worked on Hamlet by precisely doing nothing on it. Further in the years 1913-1915, only in order to develop his own signature, his literary persona, his cultural ego. Consonant with Bergson, his practice rejected the naturalist view that human destiny is shaped by predetermined factors, name, age, ethnicity, but is opened by the free will, by the boundless creative acts through which an individual was as causa sui. Appropriating Hamlet was not a matter of corrupting a past literary authorship, but of developing a unique new literary profile, of giving him self-presence, as he mentions in a handwritten note on his Hamlet of 1913, this time signed significantly as Tristan Tzara. Currently, it is to be found in the Tristan Tzara archive preserved by Kessler. I quote first in Romanian, so the notice. Am întâlnit un poet trist și fără talent. Am întâlnit un poet trist și fără talent, end quote. Which is, I met a sad poet deprived of talent, end quote. The word he employed for sad in this particular verse in Romanian is precisely the word trist, which gave his consecrated forename, Tristan, that is, the sad one. Thus, the lowering view on himself was paradoxically seminal in building up his own creative self, one indulging in impiety and anarchy. More than any other figure of the modern cultural past, maybe only next to Don Quixote, Hamlet worked as a genius-defining formula. To be or not to be seems to be such a powerful and widely acknowledged slogan already inscribed in the European cultural genetic code that it would work as an indisputable definition of originality, of literary presence and timeless cultural relevance. To hijack Hamlet was a major act of self-assertion from the part of the young writer. Tzara already enacted a striking self-contradictory gesture. He appropriated the most remarkable instance of past cultural relevance in order to configure his own precarious but actual presence confined to his mere signature, which gave his name and his literary present. He built his literary ego on the basis of a complete distrust in both his capabilities of innovating in future. His Tristan pseudonym extracted out of Triumvirate sounded like piteous scrap instead of big fuss, and in his chance to equal the past cultural achievements. As Tristan Tzara, as a pretended author of Hamlet, indicated a sad, non-talented living poet as the author of world's most famous drama of the past. However, the minimalist intervention of Tristan Tzara on a masterpiece of past universal culture in 1913-1915 powerfully recalls the similar gesture enacted by Marcel Duchamp long after, in 1919, with El H au cul. Indeed, the moustache and the inscription El H au cul, appended by Duchamp to the ready-made reproduction of Leonardo's Mona Lisa, feed on the same forma mentis already sketched by the repetitive Tristan Ruya's and Tristan Tzara's appropriations of Hamlet. In both cases, it is about a major token of a cultural value with a universal recognition. European universal recognition. In both cases, it is about hijacking the erratic originality of the past masterpiece in order to instill, via an inscription, new creative life into it in a critical way. This will be memorably formulated in 1921 by T.S. Eliot in Tradition and the Individual Talent, where he sketches what one would call now a preposterous poetics. Quote, "The whole existing order must be altered. The past should be altered by the present as much as the present is directed by the past." End quote. Through both the appropriations of Tzara and Duchamp, the actual presence of the original, which is reproduced in either mechanical or manual way, is transcended by the manipulation which infuses new significations into the seemingly dead work. Hamlet is no longer a fixed, unchanging, totemic reality, but turns into a representation open to conflicting usages. Tzara makes a crucial move here from the apparently natural understanding of the cultural objects as untouchable, given, towards a phenomenological experience of non-existing, yet lived mental objects. Tzara dislocates Hamlet both from its archaeological genetic time of the early 17th century and from its utopian time of endless reproduction as a cultural topic. He presentifies it through digestive appropriation. Tzara makes a step further from the famous Rimbaud's axiomatic statement, "Je est un autre," as he forges his own je onto a commonplace autre, taking literature as a ready-made, engineering Hamlet as an objet trouvé, and showing the cultural canon as a subverted given are crucial strategies early on developed by Tristan Tzara, defining not only the future Dada artistic practices, but also most of today's creative paradigm, like, for example, appropriation. His appropriation of Hamlet is flattening universal literature and original work to a mere image, an empty brand ready to be re-employed. Like Duchamp a few years later, Tzara, as an author of Hamlet, produces a new category of objects, possible objects in the phenomenological sense, apparently non-existing objects that make, however, part of the Husserlian noema, as they are intentional mental representations turned into an actual given, coterminous with it, although parasitically developed unto the proper given, but not less valid than it. Tzara's appropriation of Hamlet enacts phenomenological intentionalism as it intertwines retention of the past with the impersonal consciousness of the present and potential of the future. The presence is an indiscriminate mixture of the given and the possible, of archaeological and utopian timings conflated into a paroxystic present. The now is no longer a distinct point in time, but a knot into which past and future combine for a fluid consciousness. I think I'll stop. I still have something, but I don't want to exceed my allocated time.